In this, I gave Dave Mark Gurman's M3 Extravaganza, including some new surprises. Apple Watch 10 is apparently real, and next year. And the iMac, what is in the all-in-one's future? I'm Mark David, and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you. And if you want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. Now, first up, those chip details from Mark Gurman. There is no script for this part. This is just me. I have what he's revealed about the chips, and the Pro versus the Max this time is a bit of a massive shift. Now, starting off with the M3, of course, the M3 is our base chip, and this is, as it has in the past, going to have 8 cores in the CPU, which is 4 performance and 4 efficiency, plus a 10-core GPU. Now, for this one, he hasn't mentioned lower spec versions, but I have a feeling that we will probably see the same 8-core GPU option for the lower kind of tiered versions. This, of course, will go into the MacBook Pro 13-inch, which shouldn't exist anymore, the MacBook Air models, both of those, and a base Mac Mini, and probably an iMac, and of course iPad Pro 2. So this is pretty much what we're expecting. Of course, this is all potentially going to be on that 3nm process, which that's going to be the biggest difference of any of this stuff. But that's interesting, that's fine. It's basically going to be the same setup that we have right now, but just with faster components inside. That's all fine. This is where it starts to get weird though. M3 Pro, 12 to 14 core CPU, depending on whether you get the binned version or not, with 6 or 8 performance cores and 6 efficiency cores, and then you're going to get 18 or 20 GPU cores, again based on whether you get the binned version or the full fat version without any errors on the chip. Now, that system is used for basically getting much better yield out of the chips that come off the die, so any that have got slight imperfections, they can disable the cores that are damaged and continue to use them at a lower price. That brings down the cost on all of the chips overall. However, the M3 Max this time is going to be apparently a 16-core CPU, no binned options, which is going to have 12 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. Now, that means they're not using the same design for the M3 Pro and chopping it down, which is what they used to do. The M3 Pro was a chopped down version with some of the GPU cores cut off, and we'll come to the GPU in a second. But this is going to be different because it's got a different number of efficiency cores. It's got a lower number of efficiency cores and a higher number of performance cores. That is strange, because these are no longer comparable on the CPU side. Now, while we have 18 to 20 GPU cores on the Pro model, on the M3 Pro, the M3 Max is going to get 32 to 40 GPU cores this time, and that's a bit of a jump. The M3 Max, of course, goes into the higher tiered MacBook Pros, it goes into the Studio, and then once we get to the Ultras, now the M3 Ultra is going to have 32 core CPU, 24 performance and 8 efficiency cores, and then 64 to 80 GPU cores. So this is still essentially a double up of that Max chip. So this is perhaps they're being built together, and maybe there's some way that they're going to pair up the Pro chips with the M3 chips. That would be an interesting way of doing things, but I think the Pro is going to be its own die, whereas the Max and the Ultra are going to share the kind of combined dies. This is a big change. I'm surprised because there are those extra efficiency cores in the Pro, which means it's going to have much better battery life probably than the Max, but it's also, I mean, I think you might find that you're swapping battery life for performance if you go from Pro up to Max. So very different this time. Let me know what you think in the comments section. The one thing we don't have a lot of detail on is what's going on in terms of memory options on these. There do seem to be some new configurations coming. There's a 36 and a 48 gig option that's being tested by Apple internally on M3 MacBook Pros, but we don't know exactly which models it's going to be, so that will be interesting to see as well. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and let's move on to Apple Watch. So although Mark Gurman used this as the headline of his newsletter today, the Apple Watch X or 10 in the next year, I'm not going to lie, his article is a little bit light on details. Now, we kind of knew that this year's watches would be fairly minor updates, with both the Apple Watch Series 9 and the Apple Watch Ultra 2, both not really getting much in terms of hardware changes beyond a chip update as far as we know, although, you know, that's all we really ask for in a typical Mac update year on year, but we expect way different stuff from phones and watches versus the Mac. Same with iPads, I guess. Now, it's the first time really in the past 3 years that we'll have had a performance upgrade though, and there could well be some software features that get added which are exclusive, very much like the car crash detection and whatever the other one was last year. It was so minor, I've forgotten now. But next year, with the Apple Watch 10, how does Mark know that there are big changes coming, but not really have much detail on it? Well, I think there's a chance that it's kind of extrapolation. So we had 3 years of the 38 and 42mm OG design, pretty much. I know there were some slight changes from the Series 0 to the Series 1, but I think that was really just problem solving at that point. Then we had 3 years of the 40 and 44mm designs, and this year will be the 3rd year of the 41 and 45mm Apple Watches. So year 10, a new design, or at least another refinement to what we already have. Probably not some grand 10th anniversary edition as such. I don't think that's what they're going to do, unless, and this is the one thing that they might do, which would be a nice way to kind of mark it with the new design, is maybe doing that solid gold one again that they did when they first launched the Apple Watch, as a very, very limited, very nobody's really going to buy it kind of thing. Maybe. Now, Mark has vaguely mentioned micro LED displays as a potential, along with blood pressure monitoring for this iPhone X, but there's no real reference to anything akin to the rumoured blood glucose monitoring system that has been rumoured as well in the past. He's also mentioned that Apple could be looking at a thinner case design that could use a new attachment method for straps for the first time in a decade, which would render the current straps incompatible. Unless, of course, Apple produces an adapter of some kind. Welcome to the world of watch dongles. I don't feel like that would be a particularly popular idea to change the watch attachments unless there is something dramatically revolutionary about these watches, and from what I've read from Mark, he doesn't know about it or isn't able to tell us yet. And that's always a possibility with Mark. Now, we've got a question from Extravaganza. BZZERC asks, Extravaganza, 24-inch iMac M3 for budget consumers, 27-inch iMac M3 Pro for pro consumers, and 30-inch iMac M3 Max and Ultra for enthusiasts and your niche people. Your opinion? I am going to be one of those horrible people that bursts your bubble here, I think. So, I think the 24-inch size is basically what we have for iMac now. I know there have been some recent rumours that there may be a 32-inch iMac in the works, but that wouldn't be in the next year or so anyway. It looks like that's going to be around about the M4 generation from what we understand. But I also have a feeling that 32-inch device that we're hearing about is more likely to be a display, something to replace the Pro Display XDR as opposed to being an iMac, because it seems that Apple has quite happily moved away from having the two sizes of iMac. The iMac is very much a consumer device. Anything with an I at the beginning of it should be a consumer device based on the way that Steve laid out his grid of all of the product categories. iBook, iMac, that was consumer. PowerBook, PowerMac, that was your Pro stuff, which has now got the Pro moniker. That should be how it works. But then Apple's gone and confused it all with iPhone Pro, iPad Pro, and then the iMac Pro was very much, as I've said in the past, I think just a stopgap while they were working on the new Mac Pro. They needed to get something out there for pros. I don't think they ever intended to keep iMac Pro as a regular part of the lineup. That just doesn't really make sense, because the pros need the ability to upgrade and keep at the cutting edge, and there's no real reason that you would replace your display every time you needed to upgrade your performance of your system. So especially with the kind of displays that Apple puts out there, they are displays that have longevity, they are high quality displays. There's no reason to be throwing that away every time you want a performance bump. So the current system with the Studio display / Pro Display XDR and a Mac Pro or a Mac Studio or a high-end Mac Mini makes a lot more sense, I think, than having multiple iMacs in multiple sizes. The displays themselves are kind of commodity. Even though Apple has very good ones, they are a commodity piece that people may want to use something a bit different. So I don't think putting the iMac in those higher end situations makes too much sense. But I could be wrong. But how much do you think that's going to cost? Because we used to have high end, the 27-inch iMacs used to start at $17.99. Now just the display starts at $15.99. The iMac, that's the smaller one, starts at, I think, $1,300 or something around there at this point. I think that's you know, if you're pushing into those bigger displays, you're going to be in the $5,000 territory. That's not really sustainable. You're not going to move enough units to make it worth getting those displays as well. Whereas if you make the displays independent, that makes it a lot easier because you can kind of amortize that over time. Makes sense to me. Let me know if it does to you in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. If you've got a question, hashtag I gave answers down in the comments. Thank you to the Patreons for being amazing, and we'll see you in the next one. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell.